Welcome to Who You Were with Patrick Noth and Sebastian Canelli. In each episode, we ask our guests to talk about a time in their life when they were significantly different. Episode 2, Alex Dickson.
Guys, welcome to Who You Were. My name is Patrick Noth.
Hey, I'm Sebastian Canelli.
In this podcast, we bring on guests, we bring on comedians, and we get like a before and after photo for our Instagram, which is at Who You Were Podcast. We ask you to submit before and after pic, and we pick the best one every week. Sebastian, I almost feel like we should just put them all up. Like, you know what I mean? If people submit, we should just put them up.
Yeah, I like that. That's so if you submit, we'll put it up.
Yeah. Yeah, we just changed our mind. We just changed the policy. Email your pictures to whoyouwerepodcast@gmail.com. We'll put all of them up.
We put all of them because they're all the best, we'll say.
Yeah, they're all the best.
They're all the best, so you send it, we put it up. Unless it's like a picture that is the worst.
Yeah, if it's a really bad picture, we're not going to put it up.
Yeah, if you look kind of bad in it, we'll not put it up for your sake.
Yeah, if it's oversaturated or if the contrast is bad.
We just want pictures with good lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we're very excited for our guest today.
Yeah.
She is, I would say, Sebastian, I would go out on a limb and say she is one of the best, if not the best, improviser in New York City.
I know.
It's making her uncomfortable to say that.
She has to love that. I mean, she is so good. She is insanely talented. I can't believe it.
Insane.
I know. I saw it the other day, and I literally I told her. I texted her. I literally texted her. I go, "You're so good." After we did a show together, I said, "You're so good," and that wasn't a lie.
I believed you.
He separately from the text. He told me that. But in person, and then he kept texting me.
I did tell multiple people about, like, I don't know. After that show, I just couldn't believe it. I knew how good you were, but I just couldn't believe how good you're getting. Continually.
I saw on Facebook.com.
I'm not on it, so I like to hear about it.
After you did a one-person cage match set, I saw posts. One post said masterclass.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool. Oh, did we say her name?
We didn't yet.
Oh, fuck. We're so bad at this. Honestly, Pat, we suck at podcasting.
We were terrible. We're terrible. Just Alex Dickson. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. And over-complimenting me at the beginning.
Honestly, I genuinely feel that. I genuinely think you're tremendous.
Thanks, Seb.
Yeah. I do as well.
Thanks, Patrick.
Absolutely.
Oh, fuck. I lied and now I'm dying. Oh, God.
That's what you get.
Sometimes before we get into who you were, we like to ask, like, what's your life like now outside of what we know about you, outside of being a performer, an actor and all the stuff you do, a writer and all that stuff. What's your life?
Not a writer.
I think you could write.
Okay, well, I've just come to grips with the fact that I need to let that go because I don't like it.
Writing?
Yeah, I just had to come to Jesus with Sebastian about it. Where I was like, I'm not writing this.
I'm very jealous of that.
Yeah.
Who am I outside of acting? Oh my God. Let's see. I have a dog that I spend some time with. Harper. She's almost 15. She's a Parsons Russell Terrier. I've had her since I was 22. Yep. Got her for my 22nd birthday. Do the math.
I always forget how old you are, so I had to do the math then.
Yeah, I shouldn't say it, because then casting directors are like, wow, I was listening to that podcast, and now I'm not going to cast you as a 34-year-old anymore. What else?
Our biggest demographic is casting directors for this podcast.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. This is about getting TV and film work.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Okay, what else? I like to read. I like to go see movies. In the summer, love to go swimming. I love the beach.
Yeah, your parents are a part of a beach club.
They are. They belong to a little beach club in Connecticut. Sebastian's been.
I've been. Cat's out of the bag. Alex is my friend.
Patrick's my friend, too.
I know. I'm not taking that away from him, but I genuinely love Alex so much.
Oh, I love Sebastian, too. And my parents are obsessed with you.
Well, I don't blame them.
My parents, I think, every summer are like, I know you're not on The Enemy anymore, but Can Sebastian come back to the beach club?
Well, can I?
Yeah, always.
Honestly, I would love to come.
And my parents would love it if you came even without me. Truly.
Oh my god, that would be so
They'd
fun.
be so excited.
Have you told them about me at all? Like your parents?
I think they know about you.
Okay, good.
For sure. Yeah.
Alex is good with communicating like that. Like, how do you do that? Because I struggle talking to my parents about anything.
I think I just tell a lot of stories, and the people that I like a lot are in those stories. And my mom, particularly, is very interested in the people that are in my life, so she remembers them.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
I can't. My mom asks me questions, and I don't know if it's like the little 15-year-old inside of me that like wants to rebel still, and like just doesn't want to answer questions.
I think that's healthy, though.
Is it?
I think so.
My sisters are
boundaries with your
opposite.
parents.
I'm like that with my dad. I don't want to answer his question because they're usually logistical, and it's like, when is your flight coming in? And I'm like, you're not in control of the flight.
Right. I'm an adult, so I don't need to share that with you.
Yeah.
My mother does. She gets a little sad, and she goes, "Oh, Sebastian, tell me something good." and me, my mother, a beautiful woman, she took care of me her whole life practically, and she goes, "Tell me something good." I go, "There's nothing good to tell."
You should say, "I'm still alive."
Yeah, well, I know. My mother is also so funny. She'll never listen to this.
I told my mom a long time ago that I didn't believe in hell, which was a huge mistake. Mm-hmm. And we can't get 2 minutes into a conversation without her trying to convince me that hell exists.
That's such a terrible thing to
my God.
Why wouldn't you want to let someone live in a world where it doesn't exist?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you want to let
I don't
everybody...
believe that the most terrifying nightmare isn't real.
I wasn't even, like, religious that much, but, like... It was still scary. I remember crying because my sister said she didn't believe in God.
And you thought she was going to get punished for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like a little kid.
Yeah.
And my parents they didn't even go to church with me. They would just drive me to the front steps and drop me off.
Wait, what?
He's told me that before.
What? They were like, we're fine.
Yeah, they would go. My dad wouldn't even come.
It was important for him to go, but they were done going.
Yeah. So they would drop me off.
We got it. We figured it out.
And then at certain points, this is horrible, but they would give me money to give to the church, like offering. And I would just pretend to go to church and skip it with my sisters. And I would take like the $10 they gave the three of us, and we would go get sausage, egg, and cheese at the deli, and we would sit on a rock.
Which honestly was probably a better thing for your relationship with your sisters than sitting in church with them.
Sure.
Is that mean to say?
But I did steal money that was supposed to go to the church. And we would eat potato chips and sausage, egg, and cheese, and then we would get like a zebra cake or something like that.
And then did your parents ask you questions about the sermon, or did they just pick you up?
They never made a comment about church. They've never made a comment about church.
That's so funny that they would drop you off.
They would just drop us off.
Like, go to church.
And my dad would be at home watching Bob Vila. He'd go, "Okay, have a good time at church."
Oh, shit. Okay, so before we get into, like, jumping back into who you were, and for those of you listening for the first time, what we do is we bring on guests and we ask them to talk about a period of their life that was significantly different than it is now. We like to get some context for that time, so we'll just ask you, like, some rapid-fire questions for context.
Cool.
So where did you live at that time, and is that where you're from originally?
This will make more sense when I say what it is, but I technically lived in Scotland. But I was still like a college kid, so Connecticut.
Okay.
You were studying abroad?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Scotland's part of the UK.
Uh-huh.
I smiled so big when I knew that.
He was very proud of himself, for those of you who are just listening.
Is like a question that would be, are you smarter than a fifth grader?
And the answer is you are.
Sometimes.
Or just as smart, I guess.
Just as smart.
Yeah.
So I have to ask the question now. How old were you when this was happening? When you were?
20.
You were 20? Mm-hmm. That's a hard age. Mm-hmm. You're not a teen.
Right. You think that you're supposed to be more together than you really are or ever need to be.
20 is...
You're a child.
Yeah, you're a little baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you feel like, I'm 18, I'm past 18, I'm out of the house, I should be an adult. I should have everything together.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of music were you listening to at this time?
Again, this will come into play later. The song that I listened to, like, truly on a loop was Never Is a Promise by Fiona Apple.
I don't know how that goes.
It's so sad.
I feel like I've never heard it, but I can kind of guess.
I love Fiona
What's
Apple.
the chorus?
You say you understand, but you don't understand.
What did you think I wanted you to say the words? I want you to
I'm
give a
not
little
singing.
ditty.
No one wants to hear me sing. I'll sing this part. It's 'cause never is a promise and you can't afford to lie.
Woo! Hot!
I can be hired as a singer as well. A 34-year-old singer.
I don't know that song, but it sounds sad.
It's very sad.
I have sad
Fiona
songs.
Apple goes between truly depressing and a little bit of like she's pumping herself up because she's feeling a little bit better, but you can still tell that there's some darkness.
Wow. Yeah, I have sad songs I listen to too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. So what would you do for fun? Oh no.
What did I do for fun? I still liked going to movies. Oh, interestingly, I was on an improv team, and I would say that was, again, you'll understand this later, that was the only time where I truly was having fun, was doing improv.
Mm-hmm. What movies do they have in Scotland?
They usually have
Braveheart.
either like the huge, because it was St. Andrews, which is basically, what did you say? Yeah, it's just
Braveheart.
The movie theater is named Braveheart. I only play Braveheart.
It's like a rapper's
They probably hate that
bedroom
movie.
with
Yeah.
Scarface.
Yeah.
But it's just Braveheart all day, every day in the UK.
Yeah, and there's always a talk back of a panel of Scots who are talking about what was accurate and what wasn't. No, they had like a small movie theater in St. Andrews that either was playing the big movie that had just come out that was like you couldn't wait, / a couple movies that were like, didn't that come out in the United States like 6 months ago?
Oh, okay.
So I remember, the only movie I remember seeing at St. Andrews was the Star Wars movie that came out that semester.
Oh, the first one?
The bad one.
Jar Jar Binks one, the second
I believe that was the Jar Jar Binks one. Was that the year 2000?
Yeah.
That's when
2002, I mean.
I learned about, because I was so excited to see the Star Wars movies when I was a kid. And my dad, we got all hyped up, and then it was so bad. And that's
so
when my
bad.
dad taught me about expectations. I like clearly remember. He's like, sometimes you
You gotta keep the bar low.
getting more excited about something makes it harder for it to live up to that.
Wow. I can't tell if that's a nice lesson or a sad lesson for your dad to teach you.
Well, I think
It's important.
parents need to teach those lessons.
I guess he wasn't saying don't have expectations. He was just like, sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
I feel like he watched that and he was like, oh, Jar Jar Binks, this is an opportunity. This is a growth opportunity. Jar Jar Binks was a growth opportunity for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you, George Lucas.
What kind of clothes were you wearing?
Oh, man. What kind of clothes was I wearing? I feel like definitely long sleeve shirts that, interestingly, I've been doing this while we've been talking, which is funny because I'm probably going back into my mode, pulling my sleeves over my hands a lot. So long sleeve sweatshirts, things that I could like hide in, and then probably just like ill-fitting jeans. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You weren't making choices about your clothes, really.
No, and also I went to a high school where we had a mild dress code, so one of the things that blew my mind for all 4 years of college, I never got over it, was that I could wear whatever I wanted. So I remember my freshman year, my parents coming down for Parents' Weekend, I was wearing a yellow U.S. Naval Academy t-shirt that was riddled with holes. Like the armpit was just totally open. There was a huge hole in the back that just had a flap. And my mom was like, do you need us to take you clothes shopping? And my response was, no, I can wear this to school.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, I don't need more clothes. This is allowed. And she was like, and she said, that doesn't mean you should wear it. So I stopped wearing clothes like that, but it was still similar in terms of just like, I didn't care.
Did you rip it yourself, or was there a marketed Naval Academy shirt?
So this boy that I had a huge crush on in high school, who was my friend, story of my high school and college life, gave it to me because he was going to the Naval Academy, and he was like, this was my dad's. It was like a graduation gift, which was like so meaningful to me.
He probably liked you too.
He didn't, because at senior parties where we would all go and sleep in our cars at people's houses, he asked me if I wanted to sleep in the back of his pickup truck, and I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. And he set up a whole like bed. We got in the back of his pickup truck. We laid down, and he was like, can I talk to you about something? And I was like, yes, you can. And he said, I've always been in love with your friend Lauren.
Ugh.
I mean, if that's what you bring up when
God.
I'm lying next to you, you don't have a crush on
That's
me.
brutal.
No.
So anyway, he gave me that shirt, and it had some holes in it, but I think I wore it so much that it got worse.
What kind of friends, I guess, if you had to put your friends in a category, like a stereotypical category, what would they be?
Comedy, theater nerds / very good at school.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the ones, they were not necessarily theater majors, but they were, like, killing it in the religion department.
Yeah.
Or a psychology major that was just, like, getting a 4.0.
Did we ask what school this was?
No. Well, abroad was St. Andrews, but my real school was Emory in Atlanta.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this is religious. You're getting, Emory is a...
Emory's very liberal arts, but I was a religion major, and it just so happened that there were like 3 or 4 other religion majors in the improv group. But when I was abroad, 2 of those people who I had met at Emory who were in my improv team were also studying at St. Andrews, so it's the same people.
What made you choose religion?
I think it was just like I wasn't one of those people who went to college and was like, I have to major in what I want to do for a job, and I had no idea. So it was more like, what do I want to learn about? And I took a class my freshman year on Tibetan religion for a distribution requirement.
Okay.
And it was, which is, I think, an experience a lot of people have in college. It was the first class I took where I was like, oh, everything I know is because that's the social construct I've grown up in. Like, everything I learned in that class blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I got to take another religion class. So I took a completely different kind of class that was more like textual analysis. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't religious, but I also was like, this is so interesting. So then I was just like, I guess I'll major in religion because I like all these classes. Yeah. So I took like history classes, anthropology classes, sociology classes. It was fun.
That is pretty cool.
And it was a very liberal arts-minded school. So there were people in my classes who were atheists. There were people who wanted to be rabbis. So we had really cool, open, compassionate conversations, which I liked.
Sorry to interrupt. Were you religious growing up?
No. My parents also brought us to church because they thought it was the thing you should do for kids. You should introduce them to that. I've talked to them about it since. I'm like, why did you do that? My dad was like, oh, that's a nice thing for kids, right? It was like, no, it was boring. But then in middle school, I got real into it, and I became an acolyte at the Episcopal Church. I asked my mom to buy me the Bible on cassette.
Oh, my God.
And I was into it for like a year and a half, and I'll never forget. I remember being in church, and everyone was saying the Lord's Prayer, and I looked around, and it made me uncomfortable that I could tell people were saying words, but they weren't listening to the words they were saying.
Totally.
And I left and told my mom I never wanted to come back.
And that was it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then I went to church. I went to a Catholic church sometimes with this boy in high school I had a crush on.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's like, how you hook up, I hear.
Interesting enough, also was in love with my friend Lauren, same girl.
Oh,
they dated.
Lauren, lady. That was fine.
Sebastian, I like how you said that's how you hook up, I heard.
Attending a Catholic religious ceremony with your friend in high school.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what all the kids I tell them.
It didn't work out.
It didn't?
No. He dated my friend Lauren for like a year and a half.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, it was good for them.
Yeah.
Was she Catholic?
No.
Uh-oh.
But they hooked up at church.
She never went to church with him. I went above and beyond.
Wow.
Yeah.
She just had to be pretty.
So we're gonna jump into the main question, which is like, who were you? How were you different at this time? So
when I was 20, I was hospitalized. I was in a psychiatric hospital. So I left studying abroad to be hospitalized. So I was inpatient for a little bit, and then I was outpatient at that hospital for that whole summer. So what is the title of this? I used to be?
Who you were.
I was a psychiatric patient.
Wow. And what brought on that decision to leave St. Andrews and go?
Well, I think one is that I could. So I think there's a whole part of this story that is like I'm lucky and privileged and was able to do that. But what it really was going abroad. So I was depressed in retrospect for like all of college, probably hints at it in high school, but really like took it there in college, and then was like probably diagnosable like starting my sophomore year. But then I was like because college in America is like you're going to school a lot, you have a lot on your schedule, Mm-hmm. Going to St. Andrews, studying abroad, I had 2 classes a week. I think it was like Tuesday and Thursday, and other than that I had nothing to do. I had those 2 friends, but they were doing like post-grad work, so they had like lives, and they had been there a semester already, so they had lives. So I spent a lot of time alone, and I think it was like my body was like, cool, now we're going to deal with this, and it's going to truly come out. So one was that I couldn't avoid that I was depressed. Before I was like, no, this is just who I am. People can fuck off. And then when I was there, it was like became almost like a physical illness. Like I remember one day where I was like, I can't even, like I opened a book to study and I was like, I can't even read this. Like it felt like I was like my eyes didn't work. And then the other one, which I have shared with people but have never actually said in a public forum is that I was cutting myself, and I was starting to do it enough that one time I sort of blacked out while I was doing it, and I realized like I could accidentally kill myself and my parents will think I did it on purpose. And so then it was like it just scared myself.
Right. So it wasn't for you, but you're only as happy as your saddest child.
Yeah, I mean, it really was like, oh, this will destroy my mom.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you need that when you're like in a place where you're not caring about yourself.
Right. But it was actually my friend Travis who was there with me was the person I shared that with. And his mom is a therapist. And he eventually had me call her.
Yeah.
And she said to me one day, I was like, I don't remember what I was talking about, but I was talking. And she was like, stop talking. Close your eyes. If money was no object, if people's opinions weren't an issue, if you didn't have to tell anybody, like take away all the stuff that's telling you. She was like, where would you be if you could go anywhere in the world? And I didn't even think about it, and I said a hospital instead of like a beach. And I was like, a hospital, and she was like, then that's where you have to go. And then that started like putting the wheels in motion.
Wow.
Were you aware at the time of some of the stuff that was behind it, like behind the cutting and stuff like that?
No, not at the time. All I knew was like, I knew that it was something that I should keep a secret from almost everybody. Like my friend Travis knew, and I think that was it. And I wore long sleeves all the time because I didn't want anyone to know. But I think in my mind I had decided like, oh, this is just something I need to do because I'm different than people, and I know they won't understand, so I'm not sharing it with them. But I don't think, I mean, truly like, 3 months ago, I made a connection. Just I was sitting on the subway and something popped in my head where I was like, oh, that's another reason I was doing it. Like, I'm still sort of figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a lot of obviously like biological reasons too. I know like cutting releases endorphins. It's like akin to like people doing drugs and stuff. So I think that was part of it. But a lot of it for me, I think on the surface in that moment was that sort of cliched thing of like, I could look at my arm and be like, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
But also when I was out in public playing this role of like, I'm fine and I'm funny and everyone likes me, I could put my hand under my shirt and feel my arm and be like, well, this is who I really am. And it, you know, I feel like people say like depression is anger turned inwards, but I didn't want to admit that. So I would feel like, yeah, hi Sebastian, haha, yeah, touch my arm and think like, fuck you, you don't know me.
Yeah.
And then, and it was a way for me to just privately be angry. I think what I thought was at other people, but obviously at myself, because I was doing it to myself.
Of course.
Yeah, and I'm by myself. I'm alone, sort of.
Right. Yeah, it was like a constant reminder of like, you can't connect with other people because you're doing this thing.
What made Travis somebody you were willing to talk to?
Oy, that's complicated. I think there was, I think there was something about our friendship that was probably unhealthy. That, like, he was somebody who had all the answers and was put together, which, like, in retrospect, he was, like, 2 years older than me. Like, that's not true. And he was, like, the director of the improv team when I got on. So there was this sort of, like, mentorship relationship.
Yeah.
That I think was very sort of blurry for me. I think I also probably had, like, a mild crush on him and was, like, let me need you, help me, that kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
So I think ultimately it was like, eventually it was like I had shared things with him before, so it was like, I'll keep sharing things and he'll be the person who helps me.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of ways he was. But I don't know that it was something that was like he and I, if he's in town and we'll see each other, but it's like we don't have a relationship anymore. So it wasn't like, oh, he's my best friend and he's always been.
Right.
Sure.
It was just somebody that was like, oh, I can yeah, I don't know.
It was probably for you to share with him more than it was.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, to like armchair psychiatrist this, but I'm guessing there was something in the fact that I knew he wasn't actually fully emotionally available to me.
Yeah.
Because he was a very logical, rational person.
Yeah.
And so I think it was another way for me to feel lonely, was like, well, even when I share this, he's not connecting with me, so there's no one who's going to understand this.
Right. Like somebody who can't connect emotionally but will offer intellectual and logical solutions. Yeah.
Yep.
And it feels like you're being open and vulnerable, but
you're
still
not.
is.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure, that's why it's easier to share stuff I feel comfortable sharing with strangers stuff more than
right. Yeah, because you don't owe them anything and they don't owe you anything. Yeah.
So you said over time, like there's different things that are behind this, right? In the hospital, was there any indication of any of that? Like, did it help? And if so, why?
Oh, it helped so much. I think so many ways. I think one, my parents, who kind of knew that I was depressed because my mom struggled with depression for a long time. My dad is the son of an alcoholic, so he knows it. And I called my dad probably every 2 days from Scotland crying. But I think there was a level of denial with all of us. Of course. So I think it was my parents were she is sick. She's in a hospital. She is not well. So everyone had to kind of admit that.
Yeah.
So that was one. Two was I was surrounded by other sick people. And I was I still remember being resistant to feeling like we had anything in common. And then there was a day in group therapy where somebody said a sentence that felt so specific to me that I had said in my own head. And I was I just had to be oh, you're not special. That's depression talking, because that person who has nothing in common with you said the exact same thing that's been going through your head.
Sure.
So that was super helpful.
It's really nice to hear you use the word just sick
when
you talk about, and I mean that, and it's nice because it's you're not crazy.
Right.
It's I don't want that, which is a bad word, and sick takes away some of the power of it, and as a cure to it.
Right. Yeah, and it was I remember the first day I was there, I had to be inpatient. Well, they told me I had to be inpatient because it was Memorial Day weekend, so we're coming up on my 16th anniversry.
Do you think about that, your anniversary?
I usually don't, but then when I knew I was coming here, I was
Sure.
oh, that's funny, it happened this month.
Okay.
But because it was Memorial Day weekend, they said, normally we would put you in the area of the hospital where you have sort of more free. It was kind of like a campus. So it was where you'd have more freedom. But because it's Memorial Day weekend, the doctors are all away. So we have to put you in the acute care unit, which looking back was no, you were going to put me in there because you needed to watch me because I was cutting myself. But it was so don't take offense. But it was you had to leave your door open. I had to give them my shoelaces. I couldn't have music, all that stuff. They checked on me every 5 minutes to make sure I wasn't hanging myself. And so everyone else there, we were all just in this little, basically this tiny dorm. And one of the things, this is one of my favorite stories because I think it's so funny, but it also gets at why it was helpful. So I checked in, my parents left, I went into my room and I was sort of feeling great, I'm here, but there's no therapists here. I can't talk to anyone yet. And a nurse came in and was Alex, we just need to check your vitals. And I was what? And she was we're just going to temperature, blood pressure. And I almost started crying because that's what you do to a sick person. Yeah, and it was the first time where somebody was yeah, you're sick. And not in a way that was oh my God, you're sick. It was just yeah, you are. So let's take your blood pressure. Right, and sure. I remember holding back smiling because because that felt weird when she put the blood pressure cuff on me. Because I was just oh my God, there's a nurse who's taking, this is what I didn't realize, but this is what I wanted, was for people to be oh, you're not well. That's not. Yeah. But I was nervous that people would, in the hospital, that people would judge me for just being depressed. Because there was a woman shaking in the corner coming down off of whatever. Mm-hmm. There was a really, really skeletal girl getting fed yogurt in and I just saw everybody and I was oh God, I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me because everyone is going to be you privileged piece of crap.
Sure. Well, that's a big part of it too. It's how dare I get help for myself?
Yes, exactly.
So you couldn't even be depressed.
So I was nervous about that, but then the skeletal girl who I just mentioned, there was also this immediate openness in the hospital of no one is hiding anything, right? Yeah. This person is detoxing in front of everybody in the hallway because she's not allowed to go in her room and be alone. Mm-hmm. So it's there's this openness that didn't exist for me ever up until that point. Yeah. So even day one, I locked into it. And so this skeletal girl walks up to me and she was hey, is this your first day? And I was yeah. And in my head, I'm please don't ask me why I'm here. Please don't ask me why I'm here. And she was, so I kept asking her questions so that she wouldn't turn it back to me.
Sure.
So I was yeah. So you're here because you're anorexic. And she went, no. And I was I was just asking because you're so thin. And she was I'm a junkie. And I didn't know what that meant, because I remembered those, like, nobody wants to be a junkie when they grew up commercials. So in my head, it was just drugs in general. So I was like, oh, what kind of drugs did you do? And she was like, heroin. I said I'm a junkie. I was like, oh my God, this is going so badly. And she was like, heroin. I said I'm a junkie. And I was like, oh, well, I still don't understand why that makes you so skinny. And she was like, because the best shit makes you throw up, and I only did the best shit. And so again, the tape in my head that's like, please don't ask me about myself was like louder. Yes. Like, no. And then, so I was like, oh, do you miss it at all? And she was like, yeah. And she did this. She did this full, very detailed, to me, very dark, scary monologue about what she misses about the routine of tying off, finding the vein, she went through the whole thing, and she was like, it was like a religion for me. She was like, honestly, I miss that more than the actual high. She went through this whole thing. She even like went into detail about what it feels like when the needle goes in her arm. And I was just like, it was so upsetting because it was so detailed, but I was also so glad that she was talking about herself. And then when she was done, she was like, why are you here? And I was like, oh, I'm just depressed. And she was like, yeah, no shit. All of us are. Why are you here? And I was like, I mean, that's it. And she was like, but what did you do about it? And I said, I don't know what that means. She was like, I did heroin. What did you do about it? And I still had long sleeves on, and I pulled up my sleeve, and I went, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, she's going to laugh at me. I pulled up my sleeve, and I was like, I did this. And she went, ew! You did that to yourself?
Oh, my God.
And I went, yeah. And she goes, wow, you're fucked up. And I was so happy. I was like, yes, okay, cool. And from then on, I wore tank tops. God. But it also was like a good lesson of like, I can't judge. Pain is relative. Like, just because she did something different than I did doesn't mean she's judging me or thinks she's in more pain than I was. So it was like a good lesson for me to learn the first day, and that helped me to like share more openly from the get-go in group therapy, because I was immediately not embarrassed. I think great. I was still embarrassed that I was somebody who had been studying abroad and got, you know what I mean?
Because this was in Scotland.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I was depressed. No, the hospital, sorry. I flew home and was hospitalized in Connecticut.
Oh, so close to your parents.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
In my mind, I picture this girl, like, train spotted.
No, it was not Scotland.
Hey, what's your favorite thing?
That's good, Sebastian.
What can I say? I love heroin.
I was in the hospital with Sean Connery.
Oh my God. I only did the best stuff. It made me throw up every time.
It wasn't a skinny 20-year-old woman. It was a 70-year-old Scottish man. No, sorry. I missed that part of the story. No, it was in Connecticut. I flew home for that.
I just, like 2 years ago, I did this thing for this thing called the JED Foundation, which is like mental health outreach for colleges. Mm-hmm. And I told my story about like being in recovery. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were telling their story about depression. And the Noth trained us, where I was like in a room learning with these people, like storytelling, and like I was with a lot of people that had been diagnosed with depression like years ago, and I was like, oh shit, like I identify with this. So like you just heard the symptoms, and I was like, oh, that's not, everybody doesn't do that all the time. Yeah, and it helped me a lot.
It's weird. The stuff that you learn is, I like to say, is the illness of depression talking to you rather than you actually making up stuff that's true. Because I had trained myself that all those thoughts I had were just like realities of who I was or how the world works. And then, you hear somebody who's like dealing with alcoholism or something that you're like, oh, we're different. And then they say that exact same thing that's like, it almost was like creepy of like, oh, is this like a like a possession where it's like the same person who has the same way of speaking? Because it didn't really make sense. I wish I could remember the sentence, but I remember being so confused that the words were exactly the same.
Totally. It's a symptom.
Yeah.
It's a symptom. And they're all very similar. Like the things that you say to yourself. It's like...
Oh, I just remembered what it was. This isn't the exact wording, but this woman said, the thing I still struggle with is I know it's a fact to me that if people actually knew me, they would hate me. And but the way she said it was also more specific than that. And I was like, oh, that's, if she thinks that, and then everyone else in the room started nodding, I was like, so maybe that's not true, because we all think that, and we all ended up here. Oh. And it was so crazy to me, because I thought like, oh, I thought that because it must be true. Like, I know that that's a fact.
Yeah.
Just nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's it like to, I'm overwhelmed. You're sharing and I feel overwhelmed.
Do the Scottish heroin at it.
Yeah.
Well, that's I push my feelings down and do something dumb.
I mean, that's comedy.
Of course. So how long were you there?
So I was inpatient for a week. So I was in acute care. So like they were checking on me. I couldn't have my shoelace, all that stuff for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Then they transferred me to what was called main house, which was more of like, I would have to check in with them every once in a while, but I could like go outside and go for a walk by myself and walk myself to group therapy and stuff like that. And then, so all told, that was a full week.
And what's life like for you in that week?
Really scheduled, like
The opposite of what you were having in Scotland. Actually.
Yeah. You wake up at a certain time because that's breakfast.
What time?
I don't remember.
7?
Probably like 7 or 8.
It's so early.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's my
and you
thought.
have to one flew over the cuckoo's nest your medicines. Like they give you medicine and you in a little cup and you take it and you open your mouth.
Wow.
Was that your first time taking? Or is it?
No. So one of the big turns for me in Scotland, a little plug for socialized healthcare, y'all. Which my parents aren't going to listen to this. I've already decided. So I will say it blows my mind because of this that my dad still doesn't believe in socialized healthcare. Mm-hmm. The only reason I think that I was able to even come close to getting to a place where I was able to say I need to come home is that I had, because I was a student in Scotland, I had access to healthcare as if I were a citizen.
Yeah.
So I started going to see a school therapist just to talk. And she suggested to me, which I think was probably the only type of person I could have heard this from, because I think my dad had said it before, and I was like, fuck you don't know me. I'm not like my mom. Mm-hmm. But when a Scottish woman who I'd never met was like, have you thought about antidepressants? And I was like, no. And she was like, they're free. You might as well just try them.
Yeah.
And so she sent me to a psychiatrist, which was free.
Wow.
He prescribed me, I think it was Celexa, which was free.
Jesus.
And he was just like, take it for 2 weeks. If it kicks in, it kicks in. If it doesn't, but we'll talk about it. And I remember it didn't obviously cure me, but I had been on it for about 10 days, and I'll never forget this moment, hopefully, where I was like sitting in my dorm room, and it felt like seaweed or something got taken off of my face. And I just had this moment where I was like, oh, I wasn't always like this. Whereas like, and I like to use I statements, but I know this was true of all the people I was in the hospital with. When you're depressed, you get to a place where you're like, this is just who I am. This is how I've always been. And if I thought that I wasn't like this before, I was lying to myself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a moment where I was like, I got to see who I used to be I remember it lasted like 6 seconds. And then it was like the seaweed came back down. But it was enough where I was like, that's the kernel of me being like, oh, this must be an illness because I'm taking medicine and I had a moment of feeling better.
Yeah.
Can I talk about the opposite of that for a minute? I don't want to like make it about me, but I think like it's important to like, try to empathize. But when I got very depressed, it took me so long to just get help because of how complicated it was, and finding a psychiatrist that took insurance, and also
it's awful.
I think we should go back to like talking about being privileged, because it is like amazing that we can even do this at all. But at the same time, it's like getting a therapist, having to pay for a therapist, being able to pay for a therapist, being able to figure out like, recently I was trying to figure out how to get reimbursements for my insurance, and it was so complicated. It's not digital. And when you're depressed, you literally can't do that.
You can't. No.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Even getting a plane ticket to fly home to be hospitalized, other people did that for me because I couldn't imagine how to even begin to do that. And it's just buying a plane ticket. But it's like, if you factor in like, so make sure you find a psychiatrist who takes your insurance.
I know.
And then make sure that he prescribes you a medicine that is covered on your insurance. Because also that was the other thing. The nice thing about it too was I didn't have to involve my parents in that, which was huge because I didn't want them to know that I was that I thought that I had depression, because I think at that point too I didn't want my dad to be like, I know, I told you that already. Like that was
yeah, that's the last thing you need to hear.
I told you so.
Yeah, I told you you're like your mother. No. So yeah, for sure.
So
then after the outpatient, you did inpatient, then you did outpatient.
Yeah, so all told, inpatient and outpatient. Or sorry, I was inpatient for about a week, and then that ended, like first, second week of June. And then I did outpatient, so I would live at home and drive to the hospital. Started 5 days a week, and then when I started to be a little bit better, I went 4 days a week. Because the 5th day was this art therapist who I hated. And so I asked my parents, like, do I have to go to art therapy? And they were like, no, you're fine. So I really hated her. So I went 4 days a week. But I also then had my own therapist. So on the days that I didn't go, I went to see her. So it was 5 days a week. And then against most medical opinion, I went back to Scotland in August for the Fringe Festival. But I left early because I cut myself again.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you went back to outpatient at that point?
When I came back from the Fringe Festival?
Yeah.
No, I just, I went back and did some more sessions with my therapist in Connecticut, and then school was starting, and I just, I wanted to finish school on time, so I found a therapist in Atlanta, and I just went back to school.
Wow.
Which, I probably should have taken a little bit more time, but it was, really important for me that everything happened when I wanted it.
You want to feel normal.
I think so. Yeah. And I don't think going to the Fringe Festival was a bad decision, and I don't think going back to college was a bad decision. I think I wasn't fully well yet. That would take me, I think, years past that. Mm-hmm. But I think it was probably good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to try.
Yeah.
And then to see where you're at.
Yeah. And that was my parents were really great in hearing me saying this is what I want to do and being like, okay, but if it's not working, let us know and you can come back. It wasn't like, all right, well, good luck. It was like, cool, keep us updated and you can always come back.
They sounded really supportive, honestly, during this time.
Yeah, they were great. It was just hard. The very beginning, I think like I said, there was a lot of denial. When I flew home, I didn't go right to the hospital. It was like they were acting like she's home, so everything's fine. Sure. And I had to have Travis's mom call my mom and be like, you need to put it. But that was
of course,
my mom was having a hard time. It was sad.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were in denial about my life.
Yeah.
And I think they still
Makes
are.
sense. Yeah.
My mom and my brother at one point told, Jesus, I hope none of our families listen to this, but
it's a podcast. Nobody listens.
My mom and my brother at one point, there were multiple points in my life, but I remember one specific point that were go to a retreat, a religious retreat, and which I did, and I quit nicotine, and I came back, and I was infinitely worse.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I kind of need nicotine.
Yeah, you got to figure out the addiction that's the lesser of all the evils.
Yeah.
Yeah. I chew the gum, guys.
Good.
Of course, not today. I told him he can't chew fucking gum on the air.
Not during the recording.
Yeah,
no. Can you believe him?
You were gonna chew gum during a podcast?
He has before in the past.
The first one.
Did you hear it when you were editing the thing?
I heard it.
You didn't hear it. You saw it.
Yeah, when
very
Patrick
quiet.
chews gum, he goes, "Dom, dom."
I'm very quiet.
Who are you, Dom?
I turned into a Scottish heroin addict. So how long are we talking about this recovery process?
Okay, so my senior year of college, I was definitely still depressed, but I wasn't cutting anymore. I found tools to cope with my emotions.
What were the tools?
Well, the therapy that they had me do in the hospital is called DBT, which is now much more mainstream, but in 2002 it was this new therapy.
What's D stand for?
Dialectical. It's dialectical behavioral therapy, and it had been developed for people with borderline personality disorder, which is a disorder where one of the main symptoms is impulse control problems, which they were if you're a cutter, you have impulse control problems.
I go to CBT.
That's what a lot of people do.
Behavioral therapy.
So it combined...
Impulse control problems.
It combined CBT with a lot of Buddhist over-acceptance, meditative, coming back to your senses and things like that. So truly stuff that now feels... I remind myself of it sometimes now, but now I think is just feels obvious sometimes.
Yeah.
Of one of them that I remember doing once that's so helpful is I wanted to cut, I was so mad, and it was draw a really hot bath, get in it, and just all you have to do is think about the sensation of the water being hot on your skin and stay until it's cool. And then by the time that's over, it was cool, I'm still sort of mad about that thing, but it's not I want to do something impulsive and terrible. So there were a lot of things like that, carrying around something in your bag that smells good and just being able to take it out and smell it and focus on the smell.
Sometimes I think that, because I'm joking about the retreat thing a little bit, but I think the attitude that it's all one thing or another, in terms of just clinical science,
Right.
like falsifiable evidence, or like spiritual stuff, mindfulness. I mean, I guess mindfulness is actually being more and more accepted as but I think it's kind of dangerous to like be in one camp or the other, because it's like whatever works,
right?
Whatever
and
helps.
that's what was cool about DBT. I felt like there were all these different. There were because like CBT, there were worksheets that we would have to fill out. So I literally, and I am reminded of this when I teach improv, how many people are bad at knowing what a feeling is.
Of course, I do stop weights and like recognize what I'm feeling inside.
And I have to remind myself as a teacher that like I used to be bad at that too. Like I'd fill out these worksheets. It would be like, I'd write like, I want to cut. This is the thought I'm having. And I'd write like, the thought obviously is I want to cut. Ugh. And then it was like, this is the feeling. I want to cut. And I had to have therapists be like, I want to cut is not a feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they'd give me a sheet with all the feelings words on it. And it was like, I had to learn what that was.
And creating your own vocabulary for those words.
Right.
Like oh, I feel squirmy or something.
Right.
Like,
and then being able to separate the feeling from the thought.
Yes.
And just be like, cool, I want to cut. I'm really frustrated.
Yep.
I'm going to take a hot bath. That doesn't change the fact that I want to cut, but right now I'm not doing it. I'm taking a hot bath.
But it also gets you in your body rather than out of your head.
Absolutely.
Because I have impulse issues with food and stuff like that. So like that's what I need to like get in my body. And there is something like if I want to eat bad and like and I use the word bad and I know I shouldn't, but if I want to eat in a harmful way or something like that, I know that like if I just like it's not even about eating. It's about like the build up to do it and then knowing. And then as soon as I go, great, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. It's like...
And then it's part of it like knowing that you're going to feel bad afterwards, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
You know, it's like all self-harm.
Absolutely. I think like every single compulsion that I
sorry.
have has
No,
to
what
do...
are you saying? You're being so honest and vulnerable.
But
and
it is like we do so many things where like the bottom line is like I want to feel shitty about myself and I want to have a concrete reason to.
It becomes comfortable. It's more comfortable to be like I'm a fucking piece of shit than it is to like feel your feelings for whatever reason.
Right. I have a hard time connecting with people. It's easier to be like because they can't know about my arm than like no, I have a hard time connecting with people because I am mad at myself or I'm sad or whatever.
But you can't start feeling better and fixing the problems until you address the real problem.
I think the hard part is too sometimes like you mentioned it takes me so long to recognize what the feeling is.
Right.
Initially when you get help it's like you're so far removed from it.
Right.
You know?
I had a therapist. I moved to Chicago right after college and my first therapist was this like wonderful elderly Freudian therapist named Dr. Goldberg. I love him so much. And I had to leave him and go to somebody else because I realized that we had a relationship where I just wanted to like go out for coffee with him. He was like a grandfather to me, but I had a little bit of a relapse and it felt like he wasn't addressing it. So I sadly had to be like, I love you so much. I need to leave. And our last session, he said to me, and this was 2 or 3 years after graduating college, so 3 or 4 years after being hospitalized, he said to me, whoever you go to see, I want you to figure out what you're so angry about. And my response was, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not an angry person. I'm not angry about anything. I still didn't know that I was angry.
Yeah.
I still was living in a world where I was like, angry people are scary and me. I'm not, sometimes I get sad. I'm not mad about anything. And then like later I was like, oh, I'm pissed. I'm pissed about so many things.
Yeah.
It took me years to just be able to be like, I am angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like crazy that it takes us that long to say something we feel that probably is something maybe we were taught is a bad feeling.
Absolutely.
Or a feeling that not nice people have.
Yeah, like it's not like accepted somehow, or we just tell ourselves it's not accepted, or we're not strong if we have that.
Right. Yeah.
You spent a lot of time away from your family as soon as this was over.
Yeah, I think that was unconsciously on purpose. I think there's a reason I picked a college that I had to fly to.
Sure.
I think there's a reason I was like, I could do improv in New York or Chicago. I'll go to Chicago.
Yeah.
I think there was a reason. Because I never rebelled. I was always such a sweet, good, kind child. Yeah. And I think it was the only way that I could be like, I'm doing my own thing.
Push.
Yeah, I think so.
And now you're closer. Do you think subconsciously you also have to do that, or that's just like a career move?
Probably a little bit of both. Although when I moved back to New York, I still don't think I was fully comfortable setting like boundaries with my parents. So I don't know that it was fully that. I think it was more that I just felt more able to do it.
Yeah.
So you moved to Chicago how long after this? Like you finished college or?
Yeah, so I went back for my senior year. So that summer I was doing outpatient. Then I went back to college, finished, and then immediately moved to Chicago.
Yeah.
And I was there for 4 years.
And you talked about improv being the one fun thing when you were sort of in that really bad spot.
Yeah.
Is that something that you kind of knew that you wanted to pursue at that time?
I think that helped me realize that I had to keep doing it, because it was just like, this has to be meaningful. That, like, I mean, when I was depressed, it was like you were asking me questions before about like the picture I brought, and it's like, I don't know. I don't remember so much of it.
Yeah.
But I was fully present for those shows. I was never present. And then I was fully like locked in and present for those shows, and honestly good at it.
Yeah.
So it was the only thing where I was like, you did a good job, and you forgot about this thing that's constantly over your head otherwise for 30 minutes or whatever. So then when I went back and I was on the improv team at Emory, so I went back and did that, and I think that year I said, I wasn't a theater major or anything, but that year I said to an acting teacher, I was like, I don't know what to do because I need to keep doing this, and I just realized that like adults do this too. Yeah. I didn't know that like theaters existed where this happened. And he was like, cool, just move there and do it. And I was like, but what if it doesn't work out? And he was like, you can leave. And I knew what that felt like because I had gone to the Fringe Festival and knew it didn't work out, I can leave. So it felt like I knew I had already done that thing that feels scary, but it's not actually, because you can always come home.
Yeah.
So I was just like, cool, I'll go to the city I don't know anything about and take classes and see what happens.
You just said, and you know, we've already established that we agree, like I'm good at this, right? Was that something that you could say at the time that you were like, could you acknowledge goodness in any capacity?
Oh, besides improv?
Yeah. Oh, no, like even including. Improv.
Oh, I think that was the only thing where I was like, it was the only thing that I was getting positive feedback about that I cared about. So, like, if people were, like, at a party where, like, you're funny, I was like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
But if somebody came up to me after a show and was like, that was so funny, it was like, cool, thanks, I know. I didn't say I know, but it was like, yeah, I felt like that too.
Yeah.
Whereas every other compliment or positive thing about me was just, aside from improv, I think was feeding into me being like, we're not on the same page.
Sure.
I wonder if that's like, you know, because I've gone through phases where that's like also the case, or it's like a really big part of my validation is like performing and stuff. And I almost wonder if it's like because I'm pretending. Mm-hmm. You know? I
don't think it's because you're pretending. I think it's because you're allowing yourself to be
present.
Yeah.
I think so, and I think it's also that you can be vulnerable, but through the lens of a quote-unquote character. Sure. I mean, I always tell my students this, I can't count the number of times I've said something that's very real to me, where the audience laughs, and I'm like, cool, well, that's true.
Yeah.
Even though they're laughing like, that's crazy, or like, what a upsetting thing to say about your parents, or something. It's like, all right, well, that was fun to get out in front of a bunch of people and then have them laugh.
But I think there is something with improvisers, like, I struggle being present, and when you talk about not remembering stuff, I have that. I like can't remember chunks of my life, which is so sad.
I know.
Just because like when you're like in anxiety, it just doesn't exist because everything
it's
around.
It's like you're in survival mode.
Yeah, everything is one.
You're in your lizard brain.
There is something I think with improvising that like it brings you to the moment and it forces you. I think that's why I love it so much.
And it feels so good because even if you're in a scene with somebody where it's like you're not trying to connect with them off stage, but they hear your idea and they say yes to it, it's like that's what feels good in real life, is being like, this is something I want to do, and somebody going, I love that idea. It's like, really? Okay, cool, let's do it.
Of course, and it has to help with us, like people like that are in therapy that are trying to connect with the emotions they feel, because on stage I would allow myself, I know you're a very emotional player, and like I'm a very emotional player as well.
I'm getting there, guys.
But
you're an emotional player.
Yeah, you are.
I'm learning.
Okay.
But like I think that it like brings me it allows me to feel those emotions, and it allowed me to open up more stuff inside of me.
Yeah, it's also fun because, like, I remember in acting school I had a teacher who was like, or no, actually this happened in the hospital, and then someone said it in acting school about acting, and I was like, cool, where somebody was like, I think we were in group therapy, and somebody was talking about how, like, they still get down on themselves when they're having a sad day, and the therapist was like, not being a depressed person doesn't mean we don't feel sad. It means, and she was like, it means we have this exciting thing now where we get to feel the full range of human emotion and acknowledge it. She was like, so sometimes you can be like, oh, I'm sad today. I get to feel sad and not feel scared or angry or whatever. And then when I was in acting school, I had a teacher who was like, enjoy this scene. You get to experience the full range of human emotion. And I was like, oh, is that why I like acting? Yeah. And then I think that with improv a lot, I'll say to my students, like, you get to be in a scene where you get to chew this guy out who just broke up with you. Even in real life, if you're somebody who's polite in that moment, enjoy that you get to experience the full range of
that's beautiful.
That.
You know, it's when you're coaching too, I feel like you do it a lot intuitively. You're like, oh, this person has a tough time being angry, and you're like, react to that.
Yeah, get mad. Yeah. I do it to a lot of polite people where I'm like, chew him out, call him a name, and they're like, what?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, have fun. Yell at him.
Yeah, I think do you feel like you got better at feeling your feelings in the present moment, like getting to be sad, getting to be angry, like closer to what was making you sad and angry, or do you feel like there's still...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I will say I haven't been on medication, and I'm not saying that this means that, like, everyone who thinks they're cured of depression should not be on medicine. It just so happens that it's worked out for me that I found a therapist in New York where I was able to wean myself off, blah, blah, blah.
And you do a good job with routine. I know that you, like, take care of yourself as a person, I think, which is most of the battle as well.
Yeah, but I also think that's only been, I think, something in the last 3 or 4 years where it's like, cool, now I'm doing this, what's the next thing? It's like continuing to be aware of... I had this teacher in acting school she was like 190 years old, and she would say... she was so old. She was really good friends with Marlon Brando, to give you an idea of how old she was. But she would say, the older I get, the more I know what feeds me and what eats me. And she was like, and I'm too old for anything to eat me anymore. And so I think that a lot, where it's like, oh, this thing doesn't work anymore, so stop doing that. This thing feeds me, so even if I don't like going to the gym, I know that it makes me feel good, so I have to do that. So I even, like, write it down in my calendar, so I have to do it. But I think, like, to answer, it's like I'm always like, it's not like I went to the hospital and then I was like, cool, I'm gonna start eating better. It's like it's all come in pieces.
But what were you saying about medicine before I brought
that? Sorry, I forgot what your question was, Patrick. Why did I bring that up?
Feeling your feelings in the moment.
That I just think it's gotten... I don't know. I think it's just every year gets different. My current therapist says this thing that I really love, where she was like, everyone lives on a certain floor of their house. And some people are curious about the floors below, and some people aren't. She was like, some people live in the attic, and they don't ever want to go on the third, second, first floor. And she was like, she was weaning me off the medicine, she was kind of using this metaphor of, like, you're coming down the stairs now and you discovered this new thing on the third floor that you didn't know existed, so let's get to know the third floor a little bit. And then I'd get comfortable with that, and then we'd go down the second floor, and then the day or the month or whatever that I fully went off my medicine, she was like, we're in the basement, and now you want a shovel. And she was like, which is great. She was like, you're somebody who wants to dig up the floors in the basement. And I do feel like that's sort of how I feel. And sometimes I'm too hard on myself. Like, I'm like, I should know myself better. But it's like, I'm never going to be fully. But I do think, like, I am better at labeling how I feel. Maybe not in the moment, but it's taking me less and less time than it used to.
I feel like it's good to hear, and it's good to hear you say that it didn't, like, being able to schedule yourself, being able to take care of yourself, being able to feel your feelings in the moment is a process, and it took a while, and it's something that we have to constantly sort of work on.
Were you scared to go off the medication?
Yes, but we had done it so gradually that I was able to, because every time I went down, something new came up that we had to work on. And so by the time I went off of it, I had already known that, like, it is scary. I remember I thought it was, like, akin to, like, I knew there was another version of myself on the other side of a wall. And I had a sense that she was a little bit, not better, but different and maybe more okay with herself than I was, but I was still scared to meet her. And so then every time I met that new person, I had more reasons to be like, oh, it was fine last time, so let's do it again. But also it's that same thing of, like, you can go, and if you don't like it, you can come back. My therapist was like, we're going off of it, and if it doesn't work out, we can go back on, and that doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you or you failed or whatever.
And when were you doing this?
When I moved to New York in 2007, I was overly medicated, like I was shaking. And so I think it was a process from, like, 2007 to probably, I actually don't remember the year I went off of it. I probably was off by 2010 or 11, maybe 2010 probably.
Wow. So that's a good amount of time now.
Yeah. No, it took a while. It was like we would uncover something, talk for a while, and then there would be a day in therapy where I'd be like, I feel like I want to dial down again. And she'd be like, great. Okay.
You're pushing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, she never suggested it. It was always me being like, how do you feel about this? And she'd be like, if you feel ready, let's try it.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Can you talk about, like, you know, I guess, like, the biggest differences between the way you are now? I mean, I think we unpacked it a lot, but is there anything that, like, stands out to you in terms of productivity, in terms of, like, energy?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it I probably am bad at knowing, because my therapist, who didn't know me when I was hospitalized, constantly reminds me of, like, do you realize how different you are now than you were when I first met you? And I'm like, I guess, sort of, but it's like...
and how long are you with this therapist now?
This summer will be 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's great. So I think probably... Oh my God, there's so many things. Oh, you know what's a huge one is that I have boundaries now, and I know what things are me and what things are other people. Oof. And I still sometimes have to remind myself of that. Like, I still have to be like, even though this person's behavior hurts my feelings, it has nothing to do with me. Even though it feels like it has everything to do with me because it's hurting me, that doesn't mean it's about me. And I used to not be able to do that at all. I was very much a people pleaser. I was very much somebody who, because I'm emotionally intuitive, like, I think growing up with a depressed parent, you have to be able to read cues and changes in mood and behavior and stuff in order to, like, get the things you need as a child. Yeah. So I think I developed the ability to, like, be like, oh, that person's in a bad mood. I could tell that person's in a bad mood. And I used to be somebody who was like, and I have to talk to them about it so I can fix it because I can, and then they'll like me for it because that's what I'm good at.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, and now it's like, you know, if I'm friends with somebody, I'll be like, you seem sad, are you okay? But there's no sense that I'm like, oh God, I brought it up, so now I have to check in with them and fix it and all that. It's like, they know that I'm here and if they need me, you know what I mean? So it was like, I was spending a lot of energy never saying no to things, and so I think that that's gotten me to a place where I'm more easily able to identify what feeds me and what eats me.
You are great at that.
I used to be terrible.
That's so interesting because one thing that I always say is I go, oh, well, I know how Alex feels about stuff. Like she would, I never question, I never leave like us hanging out or talking about a work thing or anything. Right. And I never go, I wonder how she feels. Because I know that you're going to tell me exactly how you feel. Right.
Yeah, and it used to be the case that if you and I hung out, I would help you with everything that you needed help with and leave being like, he feels better, so I feel better, and you'd know nothing about me.
Wait, how recent was that? How recent are we talking about? You mean Sebastian? Or
no, I'm just using him. Like, Sebastian and I knew each other in college, which means he would have been 5.
Right.
No, just with people in my life, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of really, really good friends from high school and college left. Sure. I have, like, part of that is that I've always been sort of introverted. So I've never been somebody who runs with, like, a group of 20 people. But I think, like, a lot of people that I called my best friends in high school or my best friends in college are no longer, because I didn't let them, and it's not their fault, I didn't let them know me.
Yeah.
Especially women.
Yeah. When we were doing the schedule, like our availability for this podcast, and I was going through the summer, like I realized, I was like, 90% of the things that I said yes to this summer, I don't want to do at all. And I don't even know in the moment. Like, I'm like, okay, you want me to do that? Uh-huh. Yeah. Like I took 2 jobs that I didn't want, and I interviewed for them. I mean, this like sounds so like, but like they weren't even that good jobs, guys. But they liked me. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, yeah.
Right. But it doesn't sound like bragging, though, because it's important to know that. Like, there's so many people in the entertainment industry, and this may be me trying to make myself feel better, but there's so many people who, like, if you really know them, are famous or have a show that you feel like you'd kill to be on that, and you find out that they're fucking miserable, but they don't know the thing that actually makes them feel good about their life. Right. And it might be like that acting does make them feel good about their lives, but they don't want to do the press for it, and they need to be clear about it, or whatever it is. Yeah. I feel like so many people are bad, and I'm not great at it in certain situations, but I think so many people are bad at knowing that if they say the thing they can't do, or even the thing that they actually, that's why I emailed you about the writing thing.
Yeah, of course.
I was getting these emails because Sebastian and I are writing a show together, and they were like, Alex, write this sketch. And I was like, yeah, cool. I should be able to write. I should do that. I should help. And then I got an email about it, and I was just like, these are my friends. I can tell them, like, I gotta be honest, writing makes me want to die. I don't like doing it. Even if the sketch comes out well, it's not... Like, a lot of writers are like, yeah, but when it comes out well, you feel good. Even when it comes out well, I'm like, I didn't like doing that.
Yeah.
So I finally was just like, I can admit this to them, and if they're upset about it or whatever, we can talk about it. They weren't.
Nothing happened. We said,
they were
okay.
like, cool, thanks for being honest. And I was like,
I'd rather you be honest.
Right.
Because my therapist always goes, oh, it's easier just to believe someone's telling the truth.
Yeah. And then if that is somebody who gets mad at you for that, that's information you need, because you don't want that person in your life.
No. Yeah, you just need someone that's going to, this is what's going on. And it's hard to be honest. And I think that it sounds like that's been a journey from you, from someone that was, like, hiding so much.
Yes.
And now, like, you're able to tell everyone what exactly is going on.
Yeah, like, even this podcast, I was like, when you guys said who you used to be, the first thing that came to my head was, like, a person in a hospital or a depressed person. Sure. And then I thought, do I want to talk about that? That's something I don't mind sharing with people, but it's usually like people that I'm close with or whatever, and who knows who's going to be listening to this. And then I was just like, I'm not going to say anything that's not like true about me, or that I wouldn't say with somebody if they just straight up asked me.
Right.
So it felt like, this will be a good exercise in feeling like, is there stuff that's you still are ashamed about? And what I've learned today is no.
Well, thank you, honestly, for talking about that. Thank you, because I know that I knew this. This is something that I know, and I consider us close friends. And like, I never bring it up, and I would get like pieces of information from. It's so weird because it takes the microphone for me to say this stuff too. Sometimes, like, just because, and maybe it takes us like you opening up about it. Yeah. I would get like pieces of information about this part of your life, and like I would never push because it doesn't serve me to know about that. I go, if Alex wants to tell me something, she would. Right. And it's just, I don't know. But
I would also say, like, and I think this is... I remember you used to laugh at me when we first met each other because I would always ask people questions that you were like, you always ask the question you... Like, questions that other people would be like, I can't ask that. You'd be like, you just ask them. I'm like, I mean, if they don't want to answer it, they can be like, I don't want to talk about that. Yeah. But I feel that way about this. I feel like the reason I don't share it with people is, one, because I don't identify as a depressed person anymore, and I think it's important for me not to, like, constantly self-identify as that.
Of course.
Which was part of my therapy journey, too. I remember my therapist saying to me one day, now let's work on you not constantly thinking of yourself as Alex Dickson, depressed person.
Yeah.
But, so that's part of it. But the other part is that I know that when I bring it up, people are like, I don't want to, she might be uncomfortable.
Of course.
When it's like, if somebody, and Patrick can speak to this too, like, and you too, if somebody brings up some sort of thing in their past, they're probably open to people asking questions, and if they're not, they can be like, oh, I don't know, or deflect, or just be like, I don't actually want to talk about that part of it.
Yeah, I want to say that I really appreciate it as well, because like, even when you were just like saying like, oh, that's probably why I'm like pulling my sleeves up, like, I think some of it is like hard to talk about. Like, forget about like the shame, like, you know, it seems like you don't have a lot of shame about that, but in many ways you start to feel like that, the way that you did feel at the time. And, you know, just to share about myself, like, real quick, is like, when I moved in this apartment, it's a nice apartment, I really had and it was a gift, basically. Like, it was like, I can't afford to live here. And it destroyed, like, I just realized how much shame that I had, like, in my life. And it forced me, you know, to get help. And it's been like such a long process, but just hearing somebody on the other side of it, and you know, I'm getting there. But it gives me a lot of hope, like a lot of hope that I'm gonna, like, you know, with the negative self-talk, you know, I'm learning what feelings are behind that, and I'm learning what the origin of those feelings are, and I'm regressing, like, you know, like with the sleeves, like I'm regressing in certain ways. Yeah. But it's really nice to, and Sebastian has been really supportive in this too. But it's like, it's just really. I'm very grateful to hear you share about that, because I also look up to you creatively, you know, like I think you're somebody who's incredibly inspiring, and I just really appreciate it.
I also think I know that you don't want to identify as the depressed person, but I know that you don't want that it's a good thing, I think, if people hear this.
Yeah.
I think that, like, you don't have to identify it, but it's nice that you're sharing this with people, not just us, but, like, other people. Because, I mean, the community has to be filled with people that are feeling this way.
Right.
And, like, in the world. And so it's nice to hear someone who not only felt this, but, like, came out on the other side and, like, is able to, like, have their dreams and still live in them and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a nice reminder for me, because as you guys are saying that, I'm like I told you my therapist does, it's like, oh yeah, I've done a lot of work, I have stuff that I can be, it's easy to, like, speaking of not being present, to be like, I constantly have to say to myself, if I'm like, I should book more legit work, I don't ever get any auditions, to be like, if I had told 20-year-old Alex that you're going to be living in New York by yourself. You're going to be teaching at UCB and performing there. And you're going to have so many friends who know this about you and think you're great and love you. Like, if I had told that person that, she would have been like, fuck you, I don't like liars. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I have to remind myself when I'm being hard on myself or feeling like I'm not where I should be and all that negative self-talk, to almost like, well, yeah, what would 20-year-old Alex think? And she would have been like, oh, for real?
Yeah.
Okay. Or no, she wouldn't have said for real. She would have been like, fuck you. But fuck you, I'm cutting. Leave me alone.
Oh, man. When I got sober, I feel like if I had a checklist of all the, like, the things that external things that I thought, like, I want, like, I would have them. But it's, like, such an internal thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's also such, like, a creative person thing to be like, cool, I have this thing, what's next?
Yep.
I mean, I think that's capitalism. But I also think for creative people, it's creativity. It's like, oh, cool, I have this thing, I like it, I feel like I'm comfortable in it now, so what's the next challenge or what's the next way I can express myself?
Yeah.
And that's, unfortunately, because it's tied up in the business too, is tied to, like, money and stuff, which sucks.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a nice thing about being creative is, like, we want to keep moving, but it also can be an easy way for us to be shitty to ourselves.
Totally.
Which I'm saying out loud because I need to tell myself that.
Yeah. And it's also just, like, so fear-inducing when you live, like, when you have to make money.
Right.
You have to earn a living doing something that there's no guarantee.
Right.
Yeah. Sebastian, can we get a little Scottish heroin addict back in here for a minute?
Alex, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. You are a tremendous guest.
Oh, you're welcome,
I'm
McGregor.
gonna do some dope.
No, McGregor, don't. You're recovering.
Chomp, 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 chomp.
Is that your nicotine gum?
Oh, yes, I love gum and dope.
I should not joke about this. It's
and
okay.
if somebody fast forwards to the very end, they're going to be like, I'm not listening to this. They're stigmatizing addiction. And then you got to rewind and be like, oh my God, no, they're not.
Yeah.
Do you want to plug anything?
Oh God, do I want to plug anything?
This is the format.
You don't have to. I never
apologize.
plug anything.
Yeah, guys, I'm bad at promoting myself.
You can see her. She does Stepfathers every Friday night at UCB Hell's Kitchen, 9 o'clock. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my website is Alexandra-Dickson, that's DICKSON.com. And I'm pretty good at updating the calendar of my shows. If you want to see me on tour or in a sketch show, it's all there.
And thanks for coaching my team, women and men, for such a long time. It was really wonderful to have
Thank you
you.
for finally thanking me.
Yeah.
How come you don't coach me?
You didn't ask me to. I would.
Fuck
Do
yeah.
some one-on-one improv coaching.
I need help.
You know what's fucked up is I coached her for a little while. Just she didn't thank me just now.
Really? Who cares?
But I have told you in person, and similarly to you guys complimenting me, it made you uncomfortable how much I remember you coaching Detroit that one time.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
helpful it was to me.
I think it was only once, yeah.
Yeah, you coached us once, but it's probably one of the only Detroit rehearsals that I very much remember because I was like, I don't know, you were helpful to me. I needed confidence, and you helped.
I'll probably cut this part out, too.
Okay, good.
Alex, thank you so much for doing
Thank
this.
you guys. This was fun.
Yeah, you can follow us at Who You Were Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
That was me. I'm getting better at this plugging shit. Can you believe that, Alex? I did a good job. And you can follow me on Instagram. I have 4 pictures up at Sebastian Canelli. I'm hoping to get a 5th one up by the end of the summer. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and I'm at Patrick Noth on Instagram, and it's Noth with a 0, and regular old Patrick Noth on Twitter. Check out the guy who has Patrick Noth on Instagram, too, because I'm never getting the handle from this guy.
I didn't know that. That's fun.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Who You Were. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Guest before and after pics on Instagram at Who You Were Podcast. Send your before and after pics to whoyouwerepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Who You Were Podcast. This podcast is produced independently. If you'd like to support it, please visit patreon.com/Patrick Noth. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening.